Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning, afternoon or evening, based on where you are, for this extra special webinar. Today, we'll be discussing the Commonwealth African nation of the Gambia, and more specifically, the country's vibrant and evolving business market and the critical role of micro, small and medium-sized enterprises in the ecosystem. In the Gambia, MSMEs make up 95% of businesses and employ over 60% of the 2.71 million strong population, contributing about 20% to the country's GDP. What makes the Gambia's business landscape even more intriguing is the fact that 60% of the population is aged 25 or below, making the country's workforce amongst the most youthful in the whole world. Aside from a bustling and energetic workforce, the Gambian economy has much more development potential to unlock, including having one of the world's largest, richest, and relatively untouched fishing zones, with a continental shelf area of an impressive 3,855 kilometers. And the country's also on a fast track to become a prominent player in the region's data center industry. The government of the Gambia is committed to harnessing the nation's unique resources and talent of its population to diversify exports and make the Gambia a digital nation with a modern information society through a national development plan, the country's strategic plan, and most importantly, to equip, scale, and bolster the SME ecosystem to maximize potential through the Gambia National Entrepreneurship Policy with an emphasis on sustainability. To discuss all these fascinating and rapidly happening new enterprises in the Gambia, I'm very excited to be joined today by a key personality directly involved in the policy and decision-making, the Honorable Abdoulaye Njie. He's the youngest member of Parliament in the Gambia National Assembly. He was elected on the 9th of April 2022, and due to his huge commitment to his community and his vow to improve Gambian society and opportunities for youth and women. Born in the capital city of Banjul, Njie began his professional career working for the Gambia's Bureau of Statistics in 2014, and during his 6-year tenure at the Bureau, Njie was, as he remains today, an active voice advocating for the rights and betterment of his community. In 2014, Abdoulaye became the chair of the board of directors for the NGO Unity Foundation Gambia, focusing primarily on poverty alleviation and religious coexistence. In 2017, he became the chairperson of the Development-Oriented Citizens Banjul, a non-political civil society organization aimed at promoting tolerant and progressive social values. In 2020, he became a global peace ambassador for the Global Peace Chain, an organization committed to building resilience and inclusivity in cultural communities. And last year, Abdoulaye was awarded the prestigious African Icon Award by the Youth Network for Positive Change. He also has a fierce entrepreneurial spirit, having set up his own business, Jabana Enterprise, in 2018 when he was 23. So the Honorable Abdoulaye Njie, it's really wonderful to have you here with us today. And before we begin, I'd just like to remind everyone that this webinar will be about an hour long. It'll include a Q&A session, and there will be a discussion session, and we will also try to get to any questions which you may raise. So I'd like to pass the floor to you to say a few words about yourself and what you're doing, and then we can dive into some conversation. Abdoulaye.
Yeah, so I first of all like to thank the Commonwealth Chamber of Commerce for facilitating and initiating this important sit-down, whereby it gives us opportunity to have an interface with the larger population globally, but also more especially young people that are involved, especially in MSME. So I'm quite elated to be here and also to share this platform with you beautiful people, to be able to have this wonderful conversation. So my name is Honorable Abdoulaye Njie. I'm a member of the Gambian Parliament, the youngest there currently. I've never really had a political, I would say, background coming into Parliament, I would say. coming to Parliament was derived rather from my charitable activities that I've been doing in my community, but also my stance in some of these civil society organizations that I led or have been part of, being very vocal in terms of national issues, especially that of young people of this country. So with that and other engagements I've been doing have made me a bit of a well-known figure. And following the last parliamentary elections that transpired, out of a lot of people from my area saying that they really needed change and they needed better representation in Parliament. That's where my name started popping up, and everyone thought that I would be a perfect fit for the position. Though it has never been, I would say, I would say something that I've been planning or anything. But sometimes when your people come calling, you have to really sit down a bit and look at the situation and see how really how can we better the lives of the people. And I realized that the National Assembly, we enact and repeal laws, and the laws that we make important for the welfare and the well-being of the general populace. So with that, I had to give it a try. At least I felt that I was young. If at all I won, I'll be able to be in a decision-making space, which we've all been advocating as young people. But if at all I also lost, I would have been still back in the advocacy space, doing my level best to make sure my voice is heard, to be able to benefit the lives of the people. So in a nutshell, this is how I came into the political arena. But since then, have not only just been a politician, but have also used my position to advocate more for young people, like for example, in making sure they are also part of the decision-making space. So currently where I am, just to buttress, in a space whereby I'm using the position currently to make sure my voice is heard, to make sure others also understand that young people can be part of the decision-making spaces, but not only that, but we also can be very good legislators, can be very good contributors towards the social economy of our country. So this just briefly what I can say currently.
Thank you very much, Abdulli. Well, I can feel your commitment and your passion, and you've achieved so much at such a young age. That's amazing. So let's start at the beginning. Tell me about your childhood. And, you seem to have been working from an incredibly young age. A lot of people in the West, it would take them till they were your age now to even get a job. So tell me about the sort of schools you went to, what your education was, your brothers and sisters and so on. Let's start at the beginning.
So I came from a very humble family, a very white family actually. In my country, if you come to Gambia and they ask you where are you from, and you say I'm from the Giant family, I would say it's a regional surname. It's well known, especially in the Senegambia region here. So I'm part of that family. Came from a very humble, very wonderful family from a very good background. Anyone you ask in my community, they will tell you good things about my family, my ancestry, where things started up till now. So I think that has contributed a lot to the person that I have become, because I'm fortunate to be able to meet both my parents alive, and they were able to, with their limited resources, take me to a very good school. Actually, I went to a private school. I went to a private school. It was an Anglican school. It was called Reverend J.C. Fry Memorial School. That's where I did my entire schooling, right? It was one of the...
I also went to an Anglican school in England, yeah. Abdulli.
Wow. Kudos to us then.
Yeah.
I think somehow that also shows you how cohesive relationship we have in Gambia with regards to the interfaith relationship, right? Because being from a Muslim family, very conservative Muslim family, being able to take into an Anglican school really says a lot about, how the Gambia is. So that's how things started. My mom was a civil servant. She's worked in the civil service for over 35 years. Mm-hmm. Over 35 years. So she's worked in possibly all the sectors. I remember when I was a little kid, from school, my mom will come and pick me up before her time elapses, before her time for work elapses, and she'll take me to her office, and I'll be sitting down. I'll be sometimes helping her with some of these files and stuff, So I was a bit bureaucratic at a very early age, kudos to her. My dad was a business person. He was a trader. He usually used to go, in some of these neighboring countries and sometimes abroad to trade. He's been having shops and stuff like that. But now he's retired, right? So I have my siblings. I have six sisters. I
Oh
have
my
a single
goodness,
brother.
six sisters. Wow.
Yeah. My dad has two wives. Yeah. So he's part of. He's permitted in our religion to have up to four. So my dad had two wives. Though my stepmom passed away in 2015, unfortunately. Yeah. But we have a very great relationship. I have an elderly brother, just one. I'm the second male in our family. So all of them are female. So I'm the youngest actually in our family, right? So so I like you said,
So
I don't
you're the
know,
youngest in your family, right?
in my yeah, I'm the youngest, yeah. So I think some things are just natural. They just come naturally. Ever since I was a young kid, I was always passionate about what I could contribute in the community, right? Sometimes we would have these community cleansing exercises, as a very young kid, I'll make sure I'll take part in them. You know, I enjoyed those moments, I enjoy helping out. I enjoy, doing certain errands and stuff like that. So I was always a very community oriented person, right? So growing up a bit, later on, I realized that, really realized that there's something called charity and philanthropy, and community service, So later on, in 2015, 2014, 2013, I, together with very like-minded people, formed an organization called an NGO called Unity Foundation. Unity Foundation, it's still ongoing after it's almost uh, this year will be our 10th year actually. So yeah, through that we initiated charitable activities. Later on, just to fast forward, we started having developmental partners and stuff. So from UK, you see, so I have been really attached with the United Kingdom for a while. So we had very good charities from UK who we've been working together with, who have been helping us, sending certain containers and certain items that we were able to use to, give to our communities. Sometimes even monetary assistance from our fundraising programs that we usually do. So technically that type of activity really kind of fostered a connection between me and the people and the community. So that was why when the last parliamentary elections came about, people weren't very happy with the incumbent back then. So out of the blue, my name just started popping up because of the relationship I had with the people, and from my charity, how I was able to benefit them,
Right,
not being in a position, right?
right.
So I think
Well,
that contributed to.
okay,
Yeah,
so
go on.
just before we get on to the parliamentary elections, just tell me a few more things. What was your favorite subject at school?
I'm not a math guy. My favorite subject actually was English language.
English. Okay, very good
Yeah,
communicator.
everyone close to me knows that. Everyone close to me knows that. Yeah, but I
Okay,
was not a math person. I hated math.
me
I
too,
hated
me too. We have a lot in common. Okay, right. And so how old were you when you left school? And did you go to university or did you go straight into work in the government?
No, actually, I never liked working for the government. Actually, that was why when I finished, actually, because I was very good at fixing electronic stuff, right? I had uh, this I don't know divine skill of just fixing things. So my dad, being a very conservative person and who's been observing me, for a while, decided. Actually, I wanted to follow some of my mates because once you finish school, you have to have to split up. So sometimes, most of the time, in Gambia here, we do not have that career counseling whereby you're able to be guided exactly what you want to do and stuff, right? So that's the importance of having a good parent. My dad was able to look at me closely and say, you know what, I think you should learn technical skills. I was like, no, I want to do commerce. Look at so and so of my friends, are going to so and so school doing. So he was like, no, you're gonna do this, But that was the best decision that was made for me, to be honest. Because later on, I was enrolled in the Gambia Technical Training Institute, you know, where I did a certificate program in electrical installation, right? And then I did a diploma program in general engineering, right? Then from there, being a very, business savvy person, like I have always liked trade and stuff. So I decided to also study business administration, BA with the IOU. So that's where my education stands at the moment. But have also done a lot of trainings, programs and stuff. I was also in Wuhan, China, for a year for a course, intensive course as well, among other things that usually
You
I
were
don't
in
usually.
China for a course. Oh, that's amazing. Whereabouts?
Yeah, for ICT, information communication technology in Wuhan. And actually, I was in
In
Wuhan,
Wuhan, right?
and actually, and something bizarre really, because I came back from China 3 days. Then the pandemic was declared,
Oh
and I
my
was in Wuhan
goodness.
actually.
Oh
I
my
was in Wuhan
goodness.
actually.
So you came
Yeah.
back at the beginning of 2020 or late 2019?
2019, late 2019.
Right,
Yeah, from
right.
September to December. Yeah.
Right. Goodness. Good thing you didn't catch it when you were
Yeah.
there. That's
Right.
amazing. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So working in government, did you enjoy that? Did you learn a lot? And working in statistics, I think you were, right?
Yeah, Gambia Bureau of Statistics. Yeah. Have worked there for a while. Worked there first as an enumerator. For example, when we have this population census, among other census that we wanted to do in terms of health or other sectors, right? Usually, we were taking on contracts. I've never really liked working for government and stuff, so I was always on the private side. So Bureau of Statistics is a government entity, but I like the work that we did because it had to do with the people as well. So I'm very people oriented. So from there, I was also working as an editor as well. Yeah, for a while.
Right. Okay, so that brings us on to sort of election time, and tell us a bit about the political system in the Gambia and the political parties and which one you ran under and so on. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah. Actually, the Gambia is a multi-party state.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So we have a lot of parties. We have about 5 or 6, because there's been an addition during these past few years. Yeah, so politically, the country is very stable. Gambia is a very stable country. Everyone knows the past 22 years what we've been going through. We were ruled by a dictatorial process, I would say, which hampered our economic process, our economic, it actually brought an economic downturn whereby there was only one winner. There was only one person who was enjoying everything. That was the president, right, at the expense of the people. So we went through a lot. It really took courage and boldness, and uprightness to be able to come out collectively as a country, to be able to oust the president. So how that happened was also, the political parties you've mentioned. After vying each individually at their own discord, they later on realized that, in order to take out the former regime, they really had to form a coalition. So that's what happened. That's what they did. And from that coalition, that's where this President Barrow, derived from. He was handpicked unanimously to be the front runner. They came in as independent candidates. So fast forward, when Barrow came into power, later on they kind of, politicians, they kind of split. So everyone went their own way, right? So the president then formed the NPP, that's the current party, and formed an alliance with other parties as well, and was able to, I would say, be where he is until this present moment. So politically, the climate is okay. Gambians are known to be very hospitable, very peaceful people. So really, in terms of the political arena, once the politics are done, it's done and dusted. We're all back to our various, everyday activities. Sometimes even political parties or political individuals to, attend, ceremonial invitation from the government and stuff like that. So yeah, they do have their mishaps, they do have their shortcomings, but compared to other countries, and I've traveled a bit, so I've seen how unstable and politically saturated some countries are. So I don't think I would take Gambia on that level. Yeah. And also, there's freedom of expression. People are free to speak their minds, and yeah. So basically, compared to other countries, I think we're okay. Our political climate is quite good.
So how did you select, or were you selected by the party that you were elected for?
Yeah, actually, I ran as an independent candidate.
You ran as
So
independent. Okay.
currently, I'm not part of any party.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah,
You
during
can
my
have your
elections,
own views
actually,
all the time.
yeah, exactly. So during my elections, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't be saying it, but I have to say it because there are young people also who are listening. During my election period, once some few parties knew that the ground wasn't very good for them because most were using monetary inducements, but I made sure I read the hearts. I made sure I had a 4-point agenda. I was able to go to the community to identify what were the problems that needed to be solved. And from out of all those problems, I was able to select 4 key areas whereby I felt that, I can't handle all these things, but at least these 4 things I can concentrate on during my tenure. And I feel that if you give me the mandate, I'll be able to make due diligence to these things. So I ran with a 4-point agenda, a holistic one. Hopefully, I'll share with you later to look at it. That's how I was able to go to each, and because Banjul is a small community, and out of the Banjulan community, we have 3 constituencies. So I'm from Banjul Central, which is the heart of Banjul actually. So it's also the most populated, but still it's very small. So there's our politics usually we go from house to house. So I was able to take my time to succinctly, comprehensively put through my agenda and my plan and what I want to do, and people bought it. And I also told them, not to be induced by monetary items, and that the decisions that they were making will go with them or live with them for the next 5 years. So I was lucky; people were able to hit with that, and they were able to trust me. And also, what helped me was most were campaigning, saying that once I get in, I will do so and so and so. But my advantage was I was able to do at least 1 or 2 things. I was able to say, have done this and this and this for you. If you give me the opportunity, I'll be able to do this and this, So that also helped me out during the election process. So I did have a couple of, how the system works. They came because they saw that we are young people. They thought maybe we might be induced by monetary items or some other things. But we stood our ground. We were vigilant, and with the help of God, we were able to, make it as an independent actually, which was quite
Amazing.
extraordinary.
That's great. So tell us more about your 4-point program. What are your 4 points, and how are you executing them?
Yeah, my 4-point agendas were first of all, I campaigned that we needed better representation, and that when I come, I make sure I do my level best to represent the constituency and also Gambia at large, both home and abroad, to the best of my ability, through advocacy, through parliamentary deliberations, through community engagements and the like. So the second point was the legislative aspect, because part of why people weren't very happy was that you might have heard about a draft constitution, right? Yeah, so unfortunately, the incumbent who was there before was part of those that voted it out, right? So I felt that you needed better legislative processes. And when I come, I make sure all these things I make due diligence for them. Most especially, I mentioned the draft constitution, but also the anti-corruption bill, which even this September it will be tabled again to be able to be completed. So once that is done and dusted, at least I'll be able to have at least a tick that I've advocated for something, that when I come, I'll make sure I'm part of those that will make sure that will pioneer the anti-corruption bill to be able to pass.
Right. So you expect that to be passed in September, and when do you think it will actually? When will it? When will it become? If it's passed in September, when will it actually come into effect?
Yeah, actually, we're legislators, so once we'll be debating on the clauses and the provisions, to see what's fitting and what's not befitting, right? And then once we, done, everything is done and dusted, it's taken back to the executive, to the government, to be assented by the president. So after that, then it becomes law. And then after that, then an anti-corruption commission will be put in place. That will be totally an organ of itself that will take, due diligence to anything that has to do with corrupt activities here in the country.
Yeah. Yeah. So that structure will probably take a couple of years to put in place, I would imagine, right?
Probably, but I don't think it should be. It shouldn't take that long. It shouldn't take that long. Though after we do our best in Parliament and it's assented by the president, then it's up to the executive to be able to come up with suitable dates to be able to for it to,
Okay, that's very impressive, and I do hope it's passed in September. So what are the other 2 points, Abdullah?
Yeah, also scrutinization, proper scrutinization, because also technically, from the look of things, I felt that those that were there before weren't really scrutinizing issues as they should, based on maybe probably the fact that there was this coalition and they were pro-government and they wouldn't want anything that would deter the government process. But most of the things that are bought from government are okay, but it's our job to not always look at the good things in any document, but to look at the lapses in document. That's where the scrutiny comes in. So I felt that we have passing legislative, proper legislative laws, right, that will govern the people with this distinction, I would say, that would govern the people to the best of our abilities. So the reason why I came up with that is usually some bills might come up and based on our partisan affiliations, we don't usually tend to do justice to it, and stuff like that. And usually it's the general populace that, I would say they are the fault, I would say, because they are the ones that these laws are made for. And if you don't make the proper legislative laws for them, it will hamper their progress, it will hamper the everyday life of these people. So I felt that also was missing, and that when we come back, when we come to Parliament, sorry, we'll make sure we do diligence to it by making sure that when it comes to the legislative process, we make sure that we do diligence to it to the best of our abilities. That will be important and beneficial to the populace without fear and favor, affection or ill will, and without no sentimental, or emotional issues attached to it.
Yeah.
So that's what I've been trying to do. Yeah.
So let's turn to business, and I wonder what you think are the main parts of the Gambian economy which have got big potential to scale up. Because I guess one of the challenges you must face is with such a wonderful young population, which is a great advantage, you also have a great need for education in the right areas, don't you?
Yeah, most definitely.
So what are the areas that you think the country should or is focusing on for growth?
Yeah, I think everyone says this, like agriculture is the backbone of the Gambia. So even if you kind of make a little research, you'll find out that the country is reliant on agriculture and tourism, for its productive, growth. However, we just don't know what has been happening since, because as a legislature, we do our level best to subsidize the industry year in, year out. We give a certain the budgetary allocation for agriculture, health and education always far supersedes all the other, sectorial improvements that we do in Parliament. So if you ask me personally, I think agriculture is very important. It's the backbone of our country, and I think it's really it's an untapped sector, I would say. The mere reason is because everyone knows that Gambia is a country that has arable land. Our land mass is so huge. There's so much to do. Our sun is top notch. Anything that even if you were to throw a certain seed to a certain place and you pass by the place some other time, you'll see that there's already growth already going on. So this is how good the land mass is. But though the government has been doing their best to, I would say, formulate policies that will be, that will upscale, I would say, the industry, but still, we still haven't been able to, really benefit from the yields of the agricultural sector as a country. Recently, there's this fertilizer policy that has been formulated to make sure at least the policy will serve as a mechanism whereby the framework will help in the purchase of proper fertilizer for the country, but also to also mix it with organic fertilizer as well. Because as a country, that's what we've always known. So right now, this policy has been set up in the agricultural sector to be able to boost the, I would say, growth of some of these crops that will be able to help us to be able to make year-round, to be able to get year-round yields as well, like all other countries. You know, there's also been some mechanized farming processes that have also been put in place. Some new technical machinery have also been put in place also. But there's always been an outcry, even in Parliament. I'm part of those that have always been advocating that we just don't know what the problem is with the sector. But let's see what happens. So let's see what happens. There are a lot of, through this policy, there are a lot of things that have been put down. And so part of what we do as a parliament also is to follow certain things, to look into them, because usually when the executive brings in something, they make promises that, you know, this has started now, so by this time, we'll be able to get this and this and this, we'll be able to have this and this year and stuff like that. So let's see what happens. I don't want to preempt things, but there's been some new innovative processes in the agricultural sector. So secondly, I think usually tourism is okay, but I think tourism is something that it's really very important for the Gambia. However, but I think it sometimes when these natural occurrences come up, it really hampers the process. It hampers the growth of the industry because it's not like a self-reliant industry. It's kind of like we're depending on something to be able to get something. Like, let's say, for example, when there was COVID, it hampered the industry.
Yeah, it's very susceptible to external shock, isn't it? Yeah.
Exactly. So it's not really something that I would say self-controlling, right?
Yes.
So I think as a country, it's really important that we sometimes look at ourselves internally, right?
Yeah.
So as a young person, usually I do speak of this in Parliament, but maybe sometimes the generational gap, they don't usually get what I'm trying to say. I think the digital industry is really an untapped sector here in the Gambia, right? But I was so happy this past the second ordinary session, our Minister for Digital Economy came up, said that the government were working on a digital economy master plan, right? So there's also this digital economy policy that will help, was proposed, if adopted, it will help, also to sync it with the Startup Act of the country that will give the young people more opportunities to reap the global dividend, global digital in Gambia here, for example. But the problem is, even if you look at the Pulse survey, right, it's telling you that most of these I would say businesses cannot reach to their customers, and so some of these customers, can reach to the distributors as well. So there's this, there isn't enough parity with regards to the process, right? So I think that it's example, if you go to UK, for example, let's say, for example, Uber, for example, right? Among other, I've never been to the UK, but at least to give it a context, I'll take Uber, for example, right? You just have your mobile phone, right? You have the application, right? Through bank transactions, you're able to, call up a cab, right? Let's say I was selling something online, for example, through certain application, I'll be able to make certain orders, stuff like that. So this is an untapped industry whereby we are still reliant on our physical way of doing marketing here in the Gambia. Though right now I'm seeing a new trend. A lot of young people are starting to, sometimes you'll enter Facebook or you go to Twitter or somewhere, you'll see certain items being sold. Certain young people are doing digital commerce and stuff like that. So I think this is something that the government needs to really put their resources in to make sure they help MSMEs in making sure they scale up their business processes. Because without that,
And do you
I don't
think
think
that's
other-
happening? Is there any, is the big impetus to SMEs to get online and use more online services?
There isn't a national platform that is set right now. So what happens is some of these SMEs that are a bit more, tech savvy, usually help themselves by making their own application, going online, and like they do it. A lot of young people here are very tech savvy. They're able to make those processes for themselves, and sometimes it costs money, right? But if you scale it up, if you compare those young people with those that are not doing it, that those that are doing physical marketing, right, they far supersede these people. So it's an untapped sector. That's why when I heard about the Digital Economic Master Plan, I was really excited about it because I think that would be used as a yardstick to have, but like you said, I think we need a national, digital platform whereby it will be our own, country platform to be able to scale up our, trade processes.
Right. And how about engagement of women in industry and commerce generally? And how does that rank and how does that rate?
I think women are quite important in trade. Example, if you look at agriculture, for example, right? A lot of young people, a lot of women are entering into the agricultural sector because it's women are very let me take Gambian women to give it a context. They are very entrepreneurial in spirit. You understand? You'll see
a lot of women in Africa are very entrepreneurial.
In Africa, exactly, yeah. So yeah, we were discussing on a Gambia. I was just trying to be Gambia specific, but Africa generally, because you will see them, they'll even have a particular work, they might be working, but still they'll always have something on the side, right? Because they're home builders. That's how they are, right? And I think part of I would say what prompts women into doing business is usually some of them or most of them usually are unemployed, right? Some of them also their jobs, they are low income earners. Sometimes the lack of job opportunities also are hindrance to their everyday life processes, and sometimes even frustration with the government. Sometimes also there are so many things that examples can be given, but I think women usually they know that they are home builders, and if you look at the African context, I think we make less than $1 a day, I would say, right? If you look at the global index, right? So women have come to realize that really, especially married women, that really, they don't really have to wait for their man to be able to provide everything, because there might come a time whereby things might not work and there won't be any areas that can supplement the household needs. So that's why women are always into the different sectors doing their level best to make sure they reach their dividends to be able to help their families as well. So I think, usually lack of unemployment is a cause of it, because most of these women also, even if you go to the rural areas, they are not literate, so there are certain job opportunities that they can't have, right? So they can only stick to the agricultural sector. That's why if you come to Gambia and you look at the sector, most of the sector participants are women.
Right. So I think some people who have tuned in are asking questions. So here's one from Peter Mann in the UK. I'd like to ask the Honourable Abdulli if Commonwealth countries, in your view, are doing enough to help the Gambia, or if you think China is more active these days.
Come again?
Do you think Commonwealth countries are doing enough to help the Gambia, or do you think China is more active these days?
I think the Gambia has been part of the Commonwealth for quite a while now, but I think we were taken off the Commonwealth by the former president, right? And then later on, we had to recommit ourselves when President Barrow came in. right? We rejoined the Commonwealth in, I think, 2018, if I'm not mistaken, right? So the Commonwealth has been helping the Gambia in terms of electoral reforms, for example, for many years, I would say, for many years since the First Republic. They've been helping out in terms of trade. They've been helping out in terms of education. They've been helping out in terms of good governance, diplomacy, and even currently in Parliament. In Parliament, we do have this very strong link with the CPA. They're helping us with a lot of technical processes in terms of our parliamentary needs as well. And also, even I think on a quarterly basis, National Assembly members are given opportunities to go to the United Kingdom to be able to learn best practices and stuff. So our relationship with the United Kingdom has been very cordial, and the Commonwealth, to be specific. In terms of okay, technically the question has to do with geopolitics, I would say.
Yes.
So when you talk of diplomacy, when you talk of geopolitics, when you come to the geopolitical arena, right? Every single country has an interest. We have mutual interest, what we call mutual interest. Like Gambia needs assistance from UK, from China, or other countries from the European Union, among other countries. And also these countries like the UK and China and other countries also, they have interest in the continent as well. So it's a give and take. So most of the time where the arguments are usually that the foreign, I would say, the foreign nationals usually tend to take more than they give. That's an argument for another day. But when it comes to trade processes, I think technically it's the same, right? Because China also have interest in the Gambia. Right now, the Sadauda Karabakh conference hall, the biggest conference center in Gambia, has been enacted by the Chinese people. You know, the Chinese are doing business in the Gambia here, just like the United people from the United Kingdom as well. You know, the Commonwealth has been a very good partner to the Gambia, right? So when it comes to monetary assistance, I would say that's where the Chinese people usually come in through, right? Because though the Commonwealth has been very forthcoming in terms of helping the Gambia, it has been more of a technical, mode of assistance, and a bit of a monetary assistance as well. So when it comes to the Chinese, it's usually solely based on trade, because we have to understand the Commonwealth setting. The Commonwealth isn't, I would say, the Commonwealth wasn't built as okay. It has some trade, it has some trade issues in it, but this is a union that has been put together for the mere fact that these were countries that were colonized by the British Empire, right? And to fast forward things, we're in an era whereby it's very important, and like they always say, one can't forget the past, right? But I think there comes a point whereby we need to look into the future. So
absolutely,
yeah. So these are Commonwealth whereby these nations come together, we're able to find common ground. We're able to common ground in terms of trade, in terms of policies, in terms of diplomatic, relations, among other things. We're able to foster unity that would that will help. But also the duty of the Commonwealth to these nations is to be able to help in terms of assistance when needed, in terms of technical, but also monetary assistance, being the larger entity as well. So this process also is done by the Chinese as well. So basically, when it comes to geopolitics, it's an interest-based level playing field, right? So it's just that right now Africans also are starting to emerge to advocate that they want more out of these negotiations. They want more out of these, trade processes. They want more out of, which is very healthy as well. It means that right now, at least it's a global, the world is a global village, and that Africa are starting to understand our value and, our duty towards the improvement of this global space as well. So basically, technically, they're all trade partners, and they all have very important roles to play with that through trade processes for the Gambia and other African countries that they have interest in.
Yeah. So you're not just a politician, you're a diplomat, Abdulli. That was very good. So I noticed one of your of the trade partners of the Gambia is Togo, which is a trade partner, and that Togo joined the Commonwealth very recently. So it's quite
2022, just last year, I think.
yeah. So it's kind of interesting that they obviously thought there was value in that, because
and Togo, and mind you, Togo is a francophone country, actually.
yes,
right?
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yeah. Yeah, there is something called the Commonwealth Advantage, according to some business schools, where there's a 20% cheaper trade cost trading among Commonwealth countries just because of similarities in systems and things. So that's kind of interesting. Yeah. And it's interesting across Africa as well. So here's some easier questions for you, I think, from somebody who's dialed in. So do you face any discrimination in Parliament because of your age? That's one of the questions somebody's asked.
To be honest, no.
Mm.
To be honest, no, I haven't. Though most of the parliamentarians, they tend to tease me, because like in a very jovial way, they'll be like, you're a kid of this parliament. Sometimes we'll be doing things jokingly. They'll be like, keep quiet, kids need to let grown up speak, something like that. Right. Yeah. But also coming into parliament as a young person, I felt that it's incumbent upon myself not to come there, with so much of a high, regard for myself, with that egoistic, sentimental approach and stuff. I came to parliament, with an open arm to embrace everyone, but also to give myself to all the parliamentarians there that are older than me, especially those that have been there for a while, to tell them to help me, assist me I'm new here, I'm young, I'll make mistakes and stuff like that, So I do my level best to learn from them to the best of my ability. And I think that has been reciprocated well, because I'm the youngest there, but all of the National Assembly members, they love me. Whatever they do, they consult me, anything that has to do with young people or youth issues, they make sure that I'm in the forefront. They share ideas with me, they help me out in so many other things. Maybe in other countries, it might be different, but here in the Gambia National Assembly, definitely, I really feel at home.
And it's a great testament to your assembly, isn't it? That's great. So you must also be a big role model, really, for young people. Do you feel a weight of being that kind of role model?
Yeah, definitely. And also, what's more important is I think I have a very big task. I have a very huge task at hand, because I think coming into parliament, my age, has really spared a lot of, lifeline for the young people. Like they're able to understand that, wow, this is possible. If Honorable Bunjai can do it, then why not? You can also do it, right? And also not only in the Gambia, but even sub-regionally, I'm usually called to conferences and invited as keynote speakers. Just recently, a few days ago, I was in Liberia. The elections are just a couple of months away. So there are a lot of young people here that are currently aspiring to run for district representative positions, among others. So they made sure there's an NGO there that was able to facilitate my coming there. So I was able to speak to the young people about the importance of having young people in the decision-making space, because though issues of young people are always debated in parliament, but I feel that he who feels it knows it. If you are a young person in the decision-making place, you'll be able to represent, that particular sector, right? So that's how important I am in the Gambia National Assembly currently. A lot of CSOs, youth groups, NGOs, they come to me if they have any reforms they want to make, or any policies or any acts that they feel that need to be amended, or so I'm really doing my best to represent them. I attend social functions that have to do with national issues, or especially young people. I go to graduation ceremonies. I go to whatever I can go to make sure the representation is there for the young people.
Yeah, I think that's so important. Yeah, that's very good.
So right now, just to buttress, right now I'm using this particular position, right? Because I'm not like the conventional politician who's like, wanting to just stay there and just enjoy things, right? I've made it incumbent upon myself that I will use this position, to make sure I advocate that and make sure that I am my voice is heard in making sure we put down good laws, so that next time when young people are up and running, they want to run for positions, they'll be like, wow, Honorable Bunjai was there, and at least we did his level best. I think it's time to be giving young people the opportunity to serve.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. So coming back a bit to the business sector and perhaps the finance sector, do you have any comments about the banking sector in the Gambia and whether you should, are you moving towards fintech at all, online banking, online insurance? Do you think there's progress in that area?
Currently, we already have fintech institutions here. There are a lot of them here actually. Just a couple of months ago, there was even a new one that was set up. We have, institutions called Kashma. We have one called Wave. We have a financial institution called APS. There are so many. Even there's this national GSM. It's a private GSM company called Chromium. Right now, I was even have a discussion with the MD. They even opting to, at least part of their provisions, they also want to introduce fintech. So it's really helping Gambians here because right now, in order back then to be able to pay your electricity bill, it's called cash power, right? In Gambian context here, pay your electricity bill in order to buy mobile credits, to make bank transfers and among, let's say cross bank transfer and stuff like that, was not, let's say 10 years ago or so, these things were not existing, right? But with the advent of fintech, and before that, I think the central bank kind of changed certain policies that accommodated that provision. Then when that happened, then we started seeing this, saw this uproar of fintech, institutions being set up in the country, and it's helping people so much because right now, you would see back then people would be lining, like for us just to be able to buy electricity, right? Some will be, standing, in shops, trying to buy mobile credit, but now you can do everything on your phone, so all these application processes are really helping. So fintech is really diversifying the way we do, especially for SMSC as well, because right now you don't need to meet the person to be able to make certain payments, for example. Through fintech, there are a lot of processes you can make in able to give and take. So yeah, it's really a lifeline for the guy.
Right. And obviously with such a young population, though, they're very digital native, right? They find it quite easy to use this. So there's another question somebody's posted, which is, how expensive is the internet in Gambia? And can children afford to do online learning courses?
Yeah, currently, if you ask me, I would say no. To be very honest, I would say no. The internet in the Gambia is so expensive, right? It's so expensive. We have multiple companies, multiple digital companies, GSM companies here. People tend to move from one to another, for the mere fact that maybe sometimes, some people will feel that this one is better than this one. But basically, if you check the rates, they are technically the same, right? And it's so expensive for the everyday person, for the lay person, I would say. And we are in a time whereby we are right now in a digital hub, we are in a global village, we have families abroad, we have people from all over the world. That's it. And we also now are very reliant on digital information as well. Now we don't go out to buy newspapers and stuff. So people really are always online. Even people that are not literate right now, there are certain sites they can go, or from, let's say, in Gambia, you go to TikTok or Facebook, there are certain online TVs, that are that use in different local languages to update the masses as to what's going on. So both literate and non-literate people are very into the social media, right? So I think when that happens, we really have to make due diligence to make sure it's affordable for the people. But in the Gambia, unfortunately, that's not the case. Because if you travel to other countries and you buy a data, you might use it like for a month or so. Where in the Gambia you can just use it for a week or less than that. And that's So currently, people are even advocating this to public utility.
I was going to ask you whether, as a legislator, you've thought about internet,
Yeah.
in fact, being infrastructure like roads and so on, which, you know,
Exactly. So currently,
yeah.
so currently our sorry, currently our Minister for Digital Economy came to the Parliament. He said that the Gambia government is currently in negotiation with an American company called Starlink. I don't know if you've heard of them,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, there are a lot of technicalities attached with him, but he's been able to explain to us that when Starlink comes, everything would be through, I would say, through the digital satellite.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Necessarily, we don't need to have certain things like, how do I say, um, certain codes or ports that will be, incorporated within our vicinity to be able to have internet. So everything will be done anywhere you are, you'll be able to use it. So this is a new innovation that we we are really very acquainted with. But he says that they are working on it, and I think the partners were even here. They met the president. So right now they're working on the modalities and stuff. So he
And will
said
that
that
lower the cost,
yeah.
or is it going to make it
No,
how?
it's gonna extremely lower the cost.
Yeah.
It will be very, very, very low to access internet and to be able to. It will also enhance the internet capacity, also to be able to reach even the rural area, the forest area.
That's potentially an enormous boost to the economy if that happened, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
So during COVID, what did children have online education, or how was that handled?
Yeah, they did have online education, but it was just restricted to a selected few who are able to afford it actually.
Mhm.
Because in order to have an online education, one needs to have a tablet or a mobile phone or the like, right? So even the education minister for education, when she came to Parliament, this same thing was posted to her, and she was like, try and help us to increase the budget so that we'll be able to cater for these things in case there are unforeseen circumstances next time and stuff. So yeah, it was really a difficult time for everyone because being an LDC nation hit by COVID without no funds, totally reliant on external funding, so
At
it wasn't
least
easy.
you produce quite a lot of food, though. I mean, that's good, right?
Yeah, most definitely, yeah. We had
Yeah.
a lot of external assistance in
Yeah.
terms of food
Yeah.
items and stuff like that.
So here's a completely different question. Somebody's asked, how's the nightlife in Gambia? Is it tourist friendly?
If you want to, if you want to enjoy the African spirit, come to Gambia. The rest, I don't want to say the rest. The rest, I want the questioner to find out for themselves. Yeah, it will be the best experience you'll ever have. That I promise.
Right. Well, you're certainly the best advert for the Gambia. Well, thank you so much. Thank you. So I think we're slightly over time, and we did lose a little bit of time in the middle. So
Sorry,
do you have anything you would like to add before we close? Because I think we could talk for a lot longer, but is there any messages that you would like to send to people from the Gambia?
It's quite an honor to have this conversation today, because I think these conversations are very important for the Gambia. The Commonwealth is a very important partner to the Republic of the Gambia, and that we go way back in history since the First Republic, I would say. And since then, I think the trade processes have been very good. The relations have been very good. The diplomatic, I would say, exchanges have also been very good. So I would just like to add that we have this saying in our local languages that whatever relations transpire between two entities, right? There are always areas to make it way better, right? So the Gambia is an LDC country, and that the UK has been, most especially the Commonwealth, has been a good partner to the Gambia. So I would just like to advocate that we also make sure the Commonwealth Chamber of Commerce try to see how to synchronize efforts with the Gambia Chamber of Commerce, I would say, in making sure you are also updated in the policies that we make, new innovative measures, to be able to see in what areas you also can chip in as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, the technical assistance is quite appreciated, and among other assistance as well. As you made mention, between the trade relations in the Commonwealth nations, there's a 20% waiver, I would say, in between the Commonwealth countries, which is very good. So I would just like to say that we also would like also more assistance from the Commonwealth as well, in both technical, monetary, and also other types of assistance as well, to be able to foster the bilateral ties to make it a bit more stronger, I would say. The Gambia, as you know, I would just slightly like to make mention of something very important, that there's been a nationwide survey, I would say, on SMEs. It was a mapping study. It was done in 2018, right? So this mapping study was done in different districts, and it covered over 3,083, 73, 83 people, I would say, right? So this study, during the time of the study, there were 115,000, I would say, 115,000 SMEs in 2018, right? So most of these SMEs, over 98% were sole proprietorship, and 21% was registered, right? 77% of those were unregistered businesses, right? So I think you heard about the national entrepreneurship policy, right?
yeah.
Yeah, national entrepreneurship policy. Then, so the policy was geared towards accelerating this process and to be able to help young people, especially SMEs, MSCs, to be able to accelerate their business processes. And through that, right now, currently, I think we have about 130 or 120,000, 120,000, I would say, MSMEs currently in the Gambia right now. So why I'm raising this is currently from the government of the Gambia, that entrepreneurship policy has been changed to the national employment policy, right? National employment policy. So this policy, according to the president, they will help create over 150,000 jobs in 5 years, right? So the economic growth of the Gambia in 2022 was 4.3%, has improved through the agricultural sector a bit, though there's still more room for improvement. This was due to the amount of rains that we were able to have. And you might know GAIPA as well, right? You know GAIPA? Yeah, it was enacted from an act of parliament in 2010, right? So since then, GAIPA also, their responsibility has been to promote and to facilitate, private sector investment as well, right? So since then up to now, currently, I think there are 10 out of 17 international companies have started operations. They were granted SICs to operate, right? And I think from the projection, I think if all of the 17, I think there are seven are in the process of being given SICs. So it is projected that when all these entities are fully operational and up and running, that will help create even 20,000 jobs, around 20,000 more jobs. So these are all processes that are currently put through that will really, but also these companies are part of the agreement. So these companies will be linked with certain MSMEs to be able to help accelerate them, to link them with the right people to upscale their businesses as well. Yeah, so currently, this process, among others, TAM hasn't given it to be able to buttress on all these things. But I think these are all areas the Commonwealth should look into to see in what areas you guys can come in as well.
Absolutely. Well, super keen on helping promote MSEs, MSMEs and SMEs, and let's try and do a lot more in that area. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Perhaps that's a good point to end today's webinar. And so, Honourable Abdulli Njai, I'd like to thank you so much for taking time out of your demanding schedule to join us today and to share all these valuable insights about your journey towards civil and community service and becoming a voice for the people in Parliament. And it's obviously because of committed and driven people like you that we can look forward to such a bright future in Africa. And we hope that the Gambia does end up benefiting from the opportunities from this Commonwealth trade advantage that I've mentioned, as well as some of the other support.
We hope
Yeah.
so, definitely.
Yeah.
We hope so.
So, and obviously the Commonwealth Chamber is very committed and believes in the power of MSMEs to drive economic prosperity. And I think the Gambia and your policies really exemplify a country that's really embracing entrepreneurship and nurturing the development of your local enterprises, which is a fantastic example for growth. So I'd also like to thank our audience for joining us today. I hope you've found it interesting and you understand more about the business landscape in the Gambia, and also how important MSMEs are in the industry and ecosystem of Gambia's business landscape. And also that Gambia is an amazing place to visit, and we've all better go there soon. So thank you again, Honourable Abdulli Njai, and look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care and goodbye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.